Okay, so today we're going to talk about design systems. I got to witness Alex's talk a couple years ago about design systems. And so maybe give just a brief intro about your experience with design systems so the audience has a sense of your credibility here, because I do not.
Yeah, so I work at T. Rowe Price. I started with a grassroots effort to grow the design system, get a lot of buy-in, and I've been running that ever since, and we're now looking at ways that we can optimize for usage with AI. So that's kind of my background there.
Yep.
And I'm the engineering manager for that.
For me, my name's Donnie D'Amato. I'm a design systems architect. My history is being the first UX engineer at Compass and then eventually building out the design system team over there. From there, I've been working with several different companies on their UI theming strategies, which is basically where mise-en mode basically came from, a lot of the research behind that. From there, my consultancy, Design Systems House, is all about the research into design systems and making those things accessible to everyone. Also big into community, where I have a live talk show called Wireframe that I bring people on to talk about design and engineering. And I also have a event coming up, which is a game show that I'm going to be launching basically next week called Undefined. I have stickers, if anybody wants stickers, promoting that event.
Right.
And those are the things I need to plug.
Sounds good. Plugged. So it's going to be a spicy debate, and we're going to go sort of a quick back and forth so we can get through a lot of these topics because design systems have solved a lot of problems for us. And they've introduced some other things, but AI, of course, is sort of potentially a big wrecking hammer to these things. So in a world where AI is generating more of our interfaces, what is the role of design systems?
I think the role of design systems is to provide those constraints so that the way the AI models can pick which of the components or utility classes are best to create that experience. And it's all shaped with design framing, so that way it provides the right layout, it provides the right views, and so I think that it's pivoting from what has been a sell for efficiency to now also being a way to make sure that the AI is building the thing in the right way.
Yep.
Yeah, I've thought about this very deeply when writing the book, actually, because one of the ways that I see AI helping out a lot is actually with design token curation. So knowing, as an example, Adobe having hundreds of thousands of tokens and trying to curate all of those values for any particular expression, that's going to take a long time for one particular expression. And especially when you have multi-dimensional expressions such as describing Home Depot and dark and critical and in particular market like China, all of those factors are going to go into and be involved in figuring out what that value ends up being for every single one of those tokens. And that is an astronomical amount of work just to express what that is meant to look like. And having something like AI help us in the curation of that particular expression would be very powerful as opposed to, again, doing it by hand.
I mean, if AI is making up the interfaces, why would it even use the design systems? How does it even get to that point?
So I hear this a bit, even at work someone says I pointed to the home page and it pulled the colors and I generated this thing. But what that doesn't get them is the quality, the testing that goes into the components, the accessibility that goes into that. If there's any analytics tracking metrics that need to go into the components, it's all baked in and it's essentially delivered to that consuming team as a service to them. And if they just generate a design based on what they have in their own repo, it could be fine, but it doesn't necessarily scale. And if a change needs to be made later to the theme, they're not going to get that change.
Yeah, so how do you put and I have two cats, how do you put the cat back in the bag? It's really, the claws, we want our AI, we want the speed, they don't want to go back into the design system. How are you dealing with this right now? I mean, this is a real deal.
It is a real deal, and I
think...
think...
emails, is it town halls, is it shutting down access to the system?
The way that I look at it is that it's got to be just as easy to use the design system as it is not using the design system. And so when I think about how to achieve that, it's through something like an MCP server for the design system, exposing all of the different parts in a way that the models can use that to construct the experience in the proper way. And if it's able to be as easy as the existing workflow that they have, or the one that they would use if they pointed to that homepage that I mentioned, then it's a lot there's a lot less barrier to entry, and it's an easier conversation to have with those individuals.
Donnie, when you're advising in these design systems, where do you start now that the world is so different?
Oh, now, I mean, I have changing my entire practice, admittedly. I mean,
Yeah.
just to kind of go ahead and jump on what Alex was saying is that we're in a world of selfware right now, where people are generating their
Selfware.
own selfware. That's right.
This is not my shirt that I chose myself.
No,
Selfware.
selfware, exactly. Yeah, I
Selfware,
mean,
selfware.
it's being able to generate your own interface, right? The thing that's meant specifically for you. And in that world, why do I need a designer to tell me what this interface is supposed to be? Right? I'm sure that there's many people out here that have gone to an interface and go, this is crap, it doesn't work for me. I wish it did something else, right? Whatever the heck that was. And in that world where you have designers that are, of course, being very egocentric or maybe even just universal design, may not be catering to me and my needs, right? And in this world of actual inclusive design, you're getting this selfware. And in selfware, what is the system then, right? Do you need a system at that point from what we traditionally know as a design system? I don't think so. So the pivot that I see happening, for me at least in my practice, is specifically in UX, right? Specifically in the conversational design that we're seeing in these chat interfaces. The way that we're interacting with AI right now is primarily through chat. So when that occurs, that user experience should have trust and safety and voice and tone and a cohesive expression that it's providing through that chat. That's not necessarily visual. It's the dialogue that you're having there. And I think that's where the system-minded folks that I certainly see in our practice today might want to consider moving over to again, have that consistency and that trust as a platform-level system.
I think you're making people like Alex responsible for systems and consistency. I think there are people out there. Who out there is sweating a little bit about Donnie's freedom of expression in selfware?
Come on, sweat.
Yeah. Who's twitching a little bit, hearing everybody making everything up? And they should. I heard should in the last session, heard should here, with blurring and should and flexible. Yeah.
So did I just hear that you said that we don't really have a need for design systems in the future, or are you saying?
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Last week on my live show, I had Brad Frost on the show, and we were talking
Give
about
me some
this.
background about Brad.
So Brad Frost is Atomic Design, also is doing a whole bunch of work on AI and design systems, very prolific in the design community. So I had him on Wireframe last week, and I probed him a little bit about this kind of idea about what we do in UX. And I want to quote him because it's a very powerful quote. He said, and I agree with him, "Fuck consistency." He said that. Okay, and the reason that he said that specifically,
Or consistency is the hobgoblin of the good mind.
that's not what he said. He said,
What?
"Fuck consistency." Okay, and the thing about that, and the reason I agree with them is again because it's meant to be user centric. Right? If that means it's not consistent, then that's the thing that's most important, right? So the consistency comes with the trust. That's the reason, at least, that I feel that I've been doing my work and many of the folks in the practice have been doing design systems, is so that when you get to that checkbox over there on saving your credit card information, that you are trusting that this is still where you used to be back on the homepage. If that checkbox is a little off, it's going to give you pause about potentially adding your credit card information in there because it's a little bit different. Maybe, is this site hacked? I'm not sure. But that trust that we have with that consistency that comes from the design system, that's where most of the practice for me has been.
I definitely see the issue with vibe coders having a really hard time with pixel perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And that you could chat all you want, but you sometimes just have to mouse that thing into place. But yeah, let's respond, Alex.
Yeah, I think design systems are definitely still a thing. I think, I mean, that's.
I think there's still a thing too, just not the way that we had it before.
Fair enough. I think we need to reposition the value of a design system within the organization. But I think that the value of the design system are those constraints for the model. And I say that in two different ways. So you've got like the generation of the code that, and I'm have an engineering background, so that's kind of the way that I think. But the code is generated, and that's one side of things, but then there's also the dynamic experience that we can provide to end users for ultra-personalization. Essentially taking all of those components that you have and displaying them in a format that makes the most sense for that user at that point in time. You're kind of meeting them where they are. And that's where that flexibility, I guess, comes into play. But I think there's flexibility around the usage of the components, and that's where like that shaping like from the designers comes into play. But it doesn't mean that like it's not needed, because I think that those components themselves, if built the right way, are a great way for a model to make choice. If you have too many choices, if you don't have any structure, then what is it to create? If it's not just with design tokens, which is maybe where you're going.
Getting some thumbs up here. How many people out there have heard of an idea or seen the concept where you're chatting with an interface as a user, not a creator, and the system behind the scenes is dynamically creating a user interface with components? Yeah, wow. Yeah, so I think having a strong component would allow the AI to pull something in and create a dynamic user interface. This is a little mind-blowing for me. I'm a little bit of a control person.
Sure.
But so for us control people, how do you give us the consistency of the brand, the consistency of the experience, but get that flexibility you're talking about?
Yeah.
How does that actually happen?
So the book is called Mise en Mode, and no, I'm just kidding. No, half kidding. It talks about it a little bit in there. But the thing is that we already know how a button is meant to behave. Why do we keep recreating buttons, thinking that we're going to be, inventing something new? We figured it out.
I think
right?
Alex is asking every front-end designer this question all the time.
Right.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah, exactly. So, why create a button all over? I mean, this is, again, why I'm pivoting very deeply, because I figured out the button. I think we've all figured out the button. I think we've all basically figured out many of the UI patterns out there. It's not a lot of novel things happening out there, and for good reason. We have introduced novel patterns with a lot of friction because it doesn't meet user expectations, right? That's why we keep seeing the same patterns over and over again, because they are tried and true and they work and they get to the people's goals efficiently in the way that they want. So we already have solved all those problems. So those problems are now encoded in the models today. And therefore, those are solved things. And if you want to express yourself in a new, exciting way, you can still have the same foundations from the buttons and drop-downs and all the other form inputs that we know, and then provide, new color, and new topography, and new spacing, and all those kinds of additional expressions on top of that through design tokens and things of that nature.
So I know that before we've had a conversation about like what is a component, and so are you saying that you wouldn't need a component for these types of things, or are you saying that you would still need components to make a modular structure to build the page?
You need predefined patterns, we can call them components or reusable pieces, that have been tried and true, things that we already know about, right? I mean, I've actually thought about this as just a general kind of thought experiment. I asked my friend Adekunle, who's also design systems currently at Grammarly, I believe, and I asked him, I said, how do we find out what even goes in the design system, right? Where does that actually come from? And people think it's obvious. Oh, of course you put the button in the design system. Of course, obviously. But how do you really know? And the way that I identified that through that conversation is literally by it existing in the interface. If your interface, your organization, your platform, didn't have a button, which is kind of wild, but if it didn't have a button, it wouldn't go in the design system, right? The reason why it ended up there is because it's already in the interface, right? So that pattern has been identified as something that you want to use. Now, the reason that we get 20 different buttons and we need a button audit to get it back down to size, that's a separate problem that I have a hot take on. But ultimately, you need these reusable pieces defined, which we've already done over the past 20, 25 years of figuring this stuff out.
Yeah. What is there in the concept of how many people out here actually run their design systems for their company?
My people.
So a lot of people. So this is really a great topic for them and for everybody. When you mentioned this in an email to me, but we were talking about what's the role here as we try to allow people to move forward fast, but then try to create this control. Is it the static audits? Is it the concept of control? Or are we really talking about more fuzzy things like brand adherence or guidance? Yesterday, Paul was talking about his liquid images, was his image creation machine, but all the images it put out were appropriate for their brand. And so if you could find a machine, like a liquid components machine, that could put out components that were compliant with your brand, is this kind of blending the situation? satisfactorily?
Yeah, I think the way that we have to measure changes, and I think that the way that we have to sell a design system changes, and I think those are kind of tied together. And I think there's a lot of times it's the efficiency play, and then after that, then it's like, okay, well, is the design system actually used on the sites? And then one way to measure that is to measure like the actual usage on a page, like a percentage of the page. But if the page is dynamic in any type of way, then there's no static evaluation of that page. So I think that, yeah, to what you kind of said in that is that we need to look at, is it following the brand guidelines? Is it actually meeting the ideals of what the system outlines? And then work to put that, work to frame that in a way that leadership sees the value in the system that it always should have been, because it always should have been about consistency, about the quality of the experience. But I think we've leaned on the efficiency because it's an easy thing to talk to leadership about.
I think it's backwards.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've always believed that the design system is a reflection of the people who are using it, right? It's basically a design system that I see as an agreement. In fact, when I was talking with Brad, he actually thinks of it as a story. It's almost like four-dimensional. But I see it as the agreement. And basically what that means is that if the organization at large wants to have purple buttons, they should have purple buttons. And it should trickle down into what you would effectively call as an agreement. And the resources of that agreement is effectively a component library, okay? Now, if someone in the dark corners of their artboard decides that the button is going to be yellow for them, that's actually okay. And I know it's going to get some design system people nervous. They're like, wait a minute, how is that okay? The reason that it's okay, in my view, is that that's going to be providing a very small amount of influence to the much larger influence of that earlier purple button. And if more people find that the yellow button is suiting them better than the purple button was, then more people will then use the yellow button. And then, organically, this system comes into agreement of all using yellow buttons because organically we've all decided to go in this particular direction. This only really works with full transparency, right?
We're getting some tears emojis here.
Totally
Donnie.
understand it. I meant to be spicy, people. You need to cry. So,
I mean, this is not just unhappy emoji or mouth open. I guess that is the unhappy emoji.
I'm up here for the mouth open, okay? I don't want any hearts. I don't want any likes. I want your mouth open, okay?
Oh, now you're getting the hearts.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, not what I wanted, but whatever. I'll take it. So this is, but for full transparency is what you need for this particular thing to work. And again, this is very kind of uncomfortable from the emojis, but having everything transparent out there, I think is really valuable because then you could see everything out in the open. It is the kind of public button audit, right? So now when you have that public button audit, you could see all of the stuff that's out there. Your chief design officer or VP of design can actually literally look at it in real time and go, what the fuck's going on, right? Why can't we decide on this stuff? And they can go ahead and make these squashes. But if you have this stuff siloed, where you don't see this stuff, and it's always in these little slices, you'll never see what's actually happening at the company. You'll see these little slices of what's going on in the company instead. And if you have full transparency in the entire system as a whole, then you could see how the influence is changing over time and what the needs are changing over time. And especially in a system like this, if some new pattern comes out, all right, let's say there's like a new timeline component that someone needs in the ecosystem. You traditionally would just see that in this one particular slice of the platform, this particular feature. No other feature would see it because it's not raised up the design system. If this is entirely transparent, right, with an entirely good organization and good platform to sit on, the other teams will see it and adopt it. And that system, again, is organically made from the agreement of saying, oh, we all align with this. The other thing that this works in for...
Let's stay right there. I think the transparency is probably just, I mean, Alex has spent a lot of time trying to just publicize the existence of these design systems, and transparency is probably just a problem in general because you've got people coming and going. And I'm curious, quick answer, I want to give Alex a chance to respond.
Sure.
When you're saying this ecosystem, is it the personalities of the designers that come in with the yellow button and the next one comes with the magenta button? Or is it the analytics where the yellow button goes out and it gets the clicks? How do you see that dynamic?
Oh, you're asking that was for Alex, okay.
Just a clarification on this dynamic system. I'm really curious about a dynamic system that comes with analytics as opposed to opinion.
Right, exactly, but that's the thing. It comes from both because, I mean, the thing is that I think we've all seen the opinions of I think this will work and eventually going into production. I mean, that's what we're seeing with PMs and leadership right now, vibe coding stuff right to the user and seeing if it works. That's what I'm seeing right now.
Got it.
Right? So in order to, I mean, I've seen the fight of design systems looking like police, and I'm trying to go completely on the opposite side where I'm not police. I'm letting you do whatever you want, and I want to show you what's going on, right, from an entirely large standpoint. And again, from the, I guess from the analytics side of this whole thing, you can see the usage because it's all transparent. You could see that 6 teams are using the purple one and 2 are using the yellow one. You could also see that the yellow button is a piece of shit when it comes to accessibility. Right? It was haphazard and whatever. They didn't fuck around. So when you choose this thing and you're like, you know, like deliberately saying, I don't care about accessibility, we could see the team that actually chose that and says, why are you choosing this one? It's not complete, right? And you can have your CDO to do that.
Let me pause you there and move you back to Alex.
Go ahead.
Feels far too chaotic for me. I just can't. I can't.
How
with
many
that.
people feel chaotic?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, there we
that's
go.
Right, because it is. So I am very, you know, I think the system is necessary to like have this central place that, yes, you can have flexibility at the application level to augment. And that's where like tokens come into play and using like CSS variables to augment at that level. However, I think that augmentation needs to be, you know, there needs to be oversight over like how well did that perform, to your analytics point, how well did that perform in A/B testing? And I think that way, and then providing that feedback up through the system is the way to get that change across to everybody else. If everybody's just kind of building their own things, and we are seeing like some add value, some that don't, then what is that going to look like for the user? I mean, like, and you also talk about like this platform where everyone's going to see this, and it's like, what does that look like in practice? Like, what does this platform look like? Because the transparency piece is, yeah, it would be really important for that to work. I think that even like what I've tried is to create like this incubator program where people build their own components and see how they work, and you can get them into the design system through a contribution. That's similar to what you're saying, but they're still using the design system as the foundation rather than it just being whatever they want to create.
Yeah.
As a practical point, Alex, have you seen or been able to feed components into some of your design teams' streams of chatting, such that when they actually are vibe coding, they're picking up components either through MCP or skills or any of these new kind of collaboration techniques that are coming out from the AI companies?
Yeah, I've seen it work very well. So like we have a...
Like what's the takeaway for folks here?
The takeaway is to make sure that people have all of the information that they need right where they need it, which is where the model essentially is when you're using that chat. So when you're creating, you don't have to think about the API of the button. It really brings into question, like, who are we building this for? Who is the API for? And I think about that because we focus a lot, or have focused a lot, on developer ergonomics, or like how good does it feel to use this component in practice? But now we have to think about also like, well, how does the model use this? And so, you know, we have an MCP server at T0 price, and we have all of our data associated with those components in there. We also have the ability to have a timeline, so you know all of the changes in the design system over time, which also helps with automatic migration from one version to another. Now, if you didn't have a system, then everybody would have to maintain and update those things on their own. Whereas if you do have a system and all the structure in place, it's much easier to build, which goes back to my point about making it just as easy to use the system as it is to not.
My sense is it could be easier, especially if it's automatic. I also sense that the oversight could be easier because you can also put in oversight skills, and you know, we have the root engineer skill for product pull requests, and we could have the Alex skill. You could go to the beach while people are enforcing the Alex bot. Okay, let's go to Q&A. I'm sure there have been lots of questions. We have lots of emojis going on. That's a really long question.
Before we do, I wanted to just mention the chaotic part.
Go
here.
for it. Well, keep going.
Just because if your system is chaotic, transparency will show your organization being chaotic. Okay? If your organization is not chaotic, transparency will show that it is not chaotic. Right? All that I'm suggesting is that we're going to show your dirty laundry. And I know it's uncomfortable, But if you actually show what's going on, you could potentially put it down into less chaos and more order from there. Because right now we're seeing like order in one slice as opposed to the entire organization.
In the software model, I think we all see how things can go out, and we appreciate innovation, but a lot of us are long-timers. And when you're at a company for a long time, all these little experiments kind of add up. And so I think in terms of, say, someone new coming into the company, where would they land? We were talking about the junior role before. Like, where does this land over the medium long term for people that are just joining, and how do they blend into a system that's like that?
I mean, because it's organic, it just happens. There's nothing really to learn as much as there is to exist inside of that system. Again, this is very unique and novel and something that I don't think anyone's really doing or thinking about. But this is a time of very significant change that's overall in just AI generally. So why not change some other things? I mean, I actually don't align with the bandwagon effect of people just doing whatever the people are doing out there. I want to question why we're doing things and expose the things that we're doing. So for a new person that's coming in, I mean, just existing in that world. In AI, all of that context that's sitting inside of this markdown file that's talking about your system, you don't need to look at design systems documentation anymore. It's inside of the chat, right. And it will reproduce the stuff that's expected from that.
Guess who reads documentation?
Say again?
Guess who reads documentation?
AI does.
AI does.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
absolutely, yeah, because humans don't
will you go ahead and move the big question out? Thank you. Okay.
No,
Donnie,
he can't.
Brand and marketing letters.
No, he will not.
Best question of the day for the... can Donnie chill with the self-promotion?
No, he will not. No, cash me outside, all right?
Yeah, I figured that. I figured that out a minute ago.
Yeah.
Okay, who owns responsibility for flagging dark patterns in a design system? Designers, engineers, or products? So when somebody comes up with something like charging the same amount of cleaning fees in a hotel system that there are for paying for each night, how do you find these design system dark components?
So, trying to think through this one. So, I guess we're talking about at the application level, not necessarily at the design system level that those would come up, because assuming that you would have already got
like they submit them and you have to do some evaluation. I
think that it comes out in that evaluation phase that if it is a dark pattern or not. I think it could also. I would imagine there would be also, this would be coming out in the review process. It's kind of also with the way that we're generating things, all of the reviews become more and more important.
Yep.
And so maybe this is just one of those things that we also have to make sure we're checking for, because if we're offloading any of the design responsibility in any way to a model and it makes the wrong decision here, then that's the place to do it.
Yeah, I think the AI safety can be moved over to design system safety, component safety. Okay, so everyone's mind in the entire world is this question. Thanks for asking it. It's amazing. Is pushing vibe-coded features to users feels horrible as a consumer? We want innovation, but we don't want chaos. Won't this backfire eventually? So,
I certainly hope so. Right? I mean, here's the thing. Again,
why would you want it to backfire?
I want it to backfire so that you could see, again, airing the dirty laundry out. I want these folks that are producing bad stuff. This goes back to the earlier question about finding the dark and deceptive patterns. If this company wants to put deceptive patterns out there, then less users are going to use that company. Right? It's the exact same thing of airing the dirty laundry, keeping everything transparent. Because the more that you get the shitty companies and the shitty experiences, the more that you're going to get self-aware and things that are specifically meant for those users that are going to achieve the goals in the ways that they wanted to. Right? If these companies would actually do good things, then those companies would have more users. It's just organically how I think it should happen.
I mean, we all think that Shakespeare might have been made by 10,000 or 100,000 monkeys typing on typewriters, but I do feel like there's an in-between area for a lot of design managers where people are, maybe it's not horrible software, but it's kind of this in-between kind of meh area. And the design system is supposed to maybe take the best of your company and the best of your designers and sort of formalize that so people can kind of move on. So maybe there's this like combination of innovation and control. Like how do you take new components and allow this innovation? So like if he's on one side and you're on one side, how do you go towards him in that sense?
Yeah, just to also comment on what you just mentioned, I just feel like that's not really a safe way to do it, because if you're impacting the consumer, not the consumer, but the user in this case, they may not come back, like if they had that bad experience.
Whose responsibility was that?
I understand that, but like if that's the responsibility of the team, then it's also the responsibility of the team or the organization to catch that before it goes out. Which you
Yes.
agree with.
Well, we don't
Hold them responsible.
we don't want today's designer to make yesterday's designer's error
Yeah.
to some degree. So we love maybe new things, but I think a lot of things are yesterday's bad errors.
And then to the innovation part, I think we can innovate at a much faster rate than we ever could, and it gives us the opportunity to prototype and then I would say put those designs in front of users ahead of time in the form of the real prototype that is built with code with the design applied.
Yeah. Those are funny shirts. I don't know where, I know where I got my shirt. I don't know what brand it is. That's funny.
It's a solid shirt.
How can this consistency scale for large products and platforms, for products for many features that wouldn't a dynamic design system natively impact the UX? That's interesting. Dynamic design system. I mean,
It depends on what you mean by negatively impacting the UX, because if the design is made for the particular individual user, it's not impacting the UX, it is specifically for that person. So, I mean, when you go across different individuals, right, you have a particular UX for this particular person, and you try to give that to this other particular person, of course, most likely, it's not going to work for them, right? But that's not the case for this. The consistency part about this is specifically user-focused. This is meant for me. Now, I had a conversation earlier, I think it was actually with Alex, talking about the bubble that this potentially provides, right? So I'm going to, devil's advocate for myself now, because the way that we've seen the filter bubble, where you only see, content that's made for you, and you don't see the dynamic stuff that's out there, the self-aware thing that I'm suggesting will make that hyper-specific now, where you don't actually see any other particular experiences out there, you only see your own. And that's itself a problem that I'm fighting myself about.
I do think that all of us should be doing discovery on components, and the first person to see it shouldn't be a random customer. So just to be clear, all these responsible designers out there are doing discovery and testing these things before launching, okay? Or there's very limited A/B test after some discovery.
That sounds very interesting. I see that sometimes, but I don't see that all the time.
Let's do a last parting comment, and yeah, go for it.
Well, I did just want to say with the dynamic design systems, I do see, though, a future where it's not just like you send it to the user and you forget that it ever happened. There's like ways to cache or to store that layout that was presented to them. And then it would be good to get feedback on that to share that same view with other users if it was to work well for them in that case. And alternatively, if it didn't work for them, if it wouldn't work for them, then it would generate something new. And you've kind of have like this ranked set of patterns. So that way, the user's getting what they need, where they need it, but it's in the way that we found works best. I think, as a parting comment, design systems are more important now than ever. I think that there's a really exciting future out there that we're going to be going into, where we've got a really different type of UI, where you might have like these anchor points within your application, like your home page, the things that really represent your brand, and you have dynamic pieces in between those anchor points, and all of that comes about because you have design system and consistency in those different parts. And so yeah, that's my take on things.
Awesome. If you want to talk about Donnie's book and self-promotion, later you want to talk about my shirt, or Alex about real things, please join us in the hallways.
And there's a podcast coming out today with Chris Strahl and the Knapsack team, so
Go listen to that.
go listen to that.
I
Yep.
thought he was the self-promotion guy. Anyway,
That's
all
right.
right,
No,
round
no.
of applause for our
We're all
panel.
plugging. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Equal
That's fantastic.
self-promotion.
All right.